everyone, welcome to the channel. I'm Ash, and today we're going to be diving into memory lane and revisiting Kamisama Hajime Mashita, also known as Kamisama Kiss. Personally, I watched the entire anime in English dub because the voice actor for Tomoe is the same as Sebastian from Black Butler, J. Michael Tandem. So here's a little background information about this anime. It started its journey in February of 2008 and ended in May 2016. There's 2 seasons with additional 4 OVAs that go over the arc where Nanami travels back in time to help Tomoe after he realizes his feelings for Nanami, and a final OVA going over the final chapter of the manga, where Nanami and Tomoe finally get together, they're getting married, and they're saying their goodbyes to their friends, and Tomoe is going to be finally turned into a human. The two have a kid, and eventually they do return back to the shrine 10 years after living as regular humans. There's also a musical that came out in Japan, and I found the entire musical here on YouTube. The syncing seems kind of off though, and Kurama's expressions are killing me. Anyway, I personally won't be checking that out, but y'all are free too. I loved all of the soundtracks for the anime for both season 1 and season 2. The opening song is a bop, and of course the ending songs are my favorite. Other than that, I absolutely loved Kurama's whack-ass songs. I can't believe that they translated the sub version into the dub. It is freaking hilarious. I always look forward to when Kurama's songs start playing in the background, especially that stupid Kiss Me Paradise song. Our cast of characters are Tomoe, a yokai, the fox familiar, previously a wild fox; Nanami Momozono, a human turned into deity, has a deadbeat gambler father who runs away overseas, I think, without Nanami, as a result leaving Nanami homeless. Shinjiro Kurama, he's a Tengu from the mountains and a pop star idol. Mizuki, water yokai who eventually becomes Nanami's familiar. Mikage, the god who gives Nanami the Mikage shrine and the status as the new land god, and Kotetsu and Onikiri, the shrine spirits. Episode 1 kicks off with Nanami becoming homeless after her father flees the country due to an enormous debt. Nanami is kicked out of her apartment and is now sitting at a bench at a random park. Before she can completely drown in her depression, she hears a man crying on a tree, scared shitless of a barking dog. She shoos the dog away from Mikage, the man who was on the tree. He climbs down and thanks Nanami, asking her why she's out alone in the park. So she gives him the little rundown of what's going on, and he kisses her forehead and gives her a crappy map and says that she can live in his home now. With nowhere else to go, she takes up the offer and shows up to his home, which turns out to be a shrine. It's a bit rundown and feels like a ghost town at first, and Nanami is greeted by 2 shrine spirits, which scares the shit out of her, but then, she starts following along with what's going on. The shrine spirits that greet her are Kotetsu and Onikiri, who mistake Nanami at first for Mikage because she's got the land god mark on her forehead, and they call Tomoe, announcing that Master Mikage has finally returned. Tomoe shows up, but is quickly disappointed to find out that the presence is actually a human girl. When Mikage kissed Nanami's forehead, he passed on the super god deity spajazz on her. So she is now a god, which is amazing, but also terrifying because now she can see the scary little crazy yokai, right? Tomoe refuses to be her familiar and runs off to the yokai realm to drink away in his sadness. The shrine spirits lead Nanami to Tomoe to ask him to help her with the shrine, but she's disappointed to see him wasting away with yokai women in his company and a drink in his hand. She storms off and runs into trouble with an old hag yokai. She climbs on top of a tree and tries using a talisman to try and fight against the crazy yokai lady who's climbing up the tree super fast and wants to eat Nanami, right? So using one of the talismans, her last talisman, she she writes in Tomoe's name, trying to summon him. He shows up, but the sly fox. He wants her to say some silly little things like she's a silly girl that needs his help or, something along that lines. But she refuses. Her ego is big, plus she doesn't want to give Tomoe the satisfaction of making her feel small. Instead, as she falls down from the tree branch, she yanks Tomoe's scarf and drags him down with her, and kisses him, forcing him to become her familiar. This info was provided to her by Onikiri and Kotetsu, so, Tomoe is gonna bully them relentlessly later for telling her how to make him his or her familiar. And with that, our adventure with the human deity begins, right? So we get into episode 2. Another crucial character gets introduced, which is Kurama. He's going to be attending Nanami's high school, and she's a huge fan, and suddenly remembers that she actually has to go back to school after missing so many days. But unfortunately, this pop star idol turns out to be kind of an asshole to our heroine. Not only is Nanami getting picked on by him, she's also wearing a dumb cat hat to school because Tomoe doesn't want her getting attacked by other yokai. It's something that he made to protect her and hide her god mark. After Nanami removes the hat, Kurama realizes that Nanami might be a land god, since he can see the mark on her forehead just out in the open, right? He tries to steal it from her. He also frames Nanami of stealing his money from him, but luckily Tomoe comes to the rescue with a dramatic entrance, bringing a fancy lunch for Nanami and calling her mistress at the same time while creeping out the rest of her classmates because he called her mistress. She drags him away and is like, you can't say shit like that. The following day, Kurama tries to steal the land god mark from Nanami, but Tomoe, figuring out that Kurama is a Tengu, turns him into an ostrich. Nanami uses her sacred word binding to get Tomoe to turn Kurama back to normal. So before I start super condensing the rest of the episodes and the 2 seasons and the rest of the main plot, let's figure out a little bit about yokai. I got this information from various websites. One is yokai.org, and the other one is the Museum of International Folk Art, which has a lot of cool little online exhibit stuff on it, right? According to the Museum of International Folk Art, yokai is a word used for all ghosts, demons, monsters, shapeshifters, tricksters, and other supernatural entities. They are often depicted as scary beings, but sometimes as cute creatures with adorable mannerisms, which kind of reminds me of all the Studio Ghibli movies, or Ghibli, either way you want to say it, right? They have those like little spirit shoots and all these little cute little items or creatures, sorry. Those are also considered yokai. The word was mostly used during the Meiji period, 1868 to 1912, but I've seen that number kind of change around those years from article to article, but I'm just gonna go with what this museum is saying. Other words used are bakemono, changing things, obake, spooky things, and mononoke, weird, mysterious occurrences. Kind of like Princess Mononoke. Okay, anyway. So kitsune are seen as tricksters, kind of like Swiper from Dora. So I guess you could say Tomoe is like Swiper. Kappa are small like children. They look harmless but can be dangerous. If they spill the water from their disc on their heads, they can lose their power or even die. Tengu are usually depicted as male, and this is relevant because later in season 2, it's a huge deal when Nanami shows up to the mountains. And in Kamisama Kiss, the kind of Tengu that we see are considered karasuke Tengu, bird-like Tengu. Despite being considered malicious, they are seen as noble and honest. Oni are demons. In this case, Akuro falls under this category since his body is immortal and he has frightening powers, right? If you go on the website that I mentioned earlier, the yokai.com or is it .org website, you can go onto their latest tab or you can click on the random and it'll spit out information about a particular yokai, which I thought was really cool if you want to check out and read about him. It's like a cool directory for yokai. According to the website and according to like a couple of yokais that I've clicked on, it seems as though most Japanese folklore is inspired by Buddhism and Indian folklore and mythology is what they said. What's a kami, right? Since Nanami is a kami. Kami is the Japanese word used for god, deity, or natural spiritual occurrence as a part of the Shinto religion, which is a religion indigenous to Japan. Right. Kami can inhabit all things and are prominent in landscape locations. They reside in shrines, and they can be found in wind, water, lightning, in the dead or alive. It's very fluid. There are purification ceremonies done in prep of big shrine visitations. The idea of purification is very common with gods and shrines, right? To cleanse and to heal, right? And I'm mentioning all of this because that's one of Nanami's abilities, and it's to kind of give more context as to why she purifies things a lot, why they have to constantly purify the miasma in the air. It's because it's related and relevant to how the Shinto religion and Kami, the gods, work in that religion, and how purification is a bigger part of that religion. After this, we meet Princess Himemiko, a water yokai who is in love with a human named Kotaru. Nanami helps the two meet and go on dates. It's kind of questionable because she's an old yokai, but then again, Tomoe is an old yokai who falls for a human too, but I guess we're gonna just pretend we do not see. This is where Nanami starts noticing how Tomoe is heavily against yokai and human relationships. He can't exactly pinpoint why he's against it, but he is against it. Tomoe thinks of humans as too frail, weak, easily damaged, and they easily die. And he feels as if they lack relatability with the yokai kind. Next, we meet Mizuki, a snake who Nanami helps out on a rainy day at her school. He leaves a mark on her as a thanks, a mark to be his bride. And he kidnaps Nanami. He used to be a familiar for a god, but sadly that goddess has passed away and he is just super lonely. And he doesn't really know how to cope with it. And when Nanami helped him, he was like, ah, yes, a reason to live. She will be my bride. So he also froze the time at his shrine, so things stay the way they used to be many, many years ago. Of course, Tomoe helps Nanami get back to the human realm, but Nanami, instead of getting mad at Mizuki and having Tomoe punish him, instead offers to come and visit him sometime soon. But realistic, we all know, if you've seen this anime, that Mizuki is usually the one visiting her. At this point, Tomoe is also attending a high school with Nanami to keep a close eye on her because every time he leaves her alone, some other yokai starts showing up and kidnapping her or starting beef with her, right? Like Narukami, the goddess of thunder. She uses her ability to steal Nanami's land god mark and transforms Tomoe into a child with Okununushi's gauntlet when she hears that Tomoe is serving as a human's familiar. She's like super offended, like, this human can't be a god. Shoo away, right? She offers Tomoe to be her familiar, and he declines. But she says the offer is still open if he wants to become her familiar. Little Tomoe's body can't handle the powers he possesses, and he grows a fever. Kurama bumps into the two because now they're homeless. The shrine doesn't belong to either one of them, right? So he bumps into them and offers to help. There's banter between Kurama and Tomoe as usual. After Tomoe falls asleep, he says Yukiji's name while Nanami is applying a cold rag on his forehead. This is the first time Nanami hears that name. Eventually, Nanami figures out that Yukiji is actually the name of a human woman that Tomoe fell in love with about 500 years ago when he was still a wild fox running around causing chaos with his buddy Akuro. Tomoe does eventually get turned back to normal thanks to the gauntlet. Everything is back to normal for now. There's a little bit more funny shenanigans here and there in a couple of episodes, kind of like when Nanami gets sick and Tomoe disguises himself as her and attends school on her behalf. There's this hilarious scene with Kurama reading English, and it's not that funny in the dub version, but in the sub version, I gotta show you.
代わりに俺が All nice coast right through aim to get to defense and over area and looks to pass. Wasn't worse, they lost.
Kurama warns Tomoe about how human girls around Nanami's age start going on dates, forming crushes, and finding lovers, that he should be careful with how he treats Nanami and the things he says to her, and how he makes her feel, because it might give her the wrong idea about their relationship. It might make her fall in love with him, which, if you've seen this, we both know that she totally falls for him, right? Around this time is when we're also introduced to Ami, a ray of sunshine who is kind of Kurama's love interest in the future, but it doesn't really go well for the two of them, right? She gets attacked by yokai at school, and Tomoe and Kurama help her out. While Tomoe and Kurama are bromancing, Mizuki visits Nanami at the shrine and warns her about Tomoe, telling her how she needs to watch her back and that he's a sly fox who used to be a crazy killer. She doesn't really believe him that much, but luckily he brought his incense tool with him and helps Nanami's soul drift back into the past to catch a glimpse of the wild fox. She ends up in the body of Yukiji, who, spoiler, is her ancestor, right? This is the first time and the only time when Nanami travels back in time and is not using her own body to travel. She finds a little boy who tells her that Akuro is looking for her and has attacked everyone in the village. He looks hurt, so Nanami tries helping him, but whoops, turns out that he's actually a yokai pretending to be a human. Before he can attack her to bring her back to Akuro, the blue fox flames appear. A long-haired yokai appears. It's Tomoe, but not really Tomoe. There's a wild, malicious look in his eyes. Not a shred of kindness left. He tears off a piece of Nanami's, kimono. Nanami yanks herself away from him, questioning him. Who is he? Before he can answer, someone familiar starts talking, and upon hearing his voice, Akuro's voice, Tomoe slams the door shut, hiding his human toy away from Akuro. Nanami seizes the opportunity to make a run for it. She keeps running and running. Luckily for her, Mizuki has started pulling her back to the present. So she's yeeted to the present and is having a hard time digesting who she saw and the type of interaction that they had. It's a Tomoe that scares the shit out of her. When Tomoe comes back from school, he's pretty pissed because one, he had to disguise himself as Nanami to attend school, and two, he's annoyed that the snake is there, and so he yeets Mizuki out. Later in school, when Nanami is feeling better and is attending again, Ami confronts Nanami about having supernatural abilities because, she saw a Tomoe disguised as Nanami kicking some yokai ass. She promises to keep that secret to herself. Back to the main plot of Yukichi, time traveling, and Tomoe's curse. Nanami's acting weird. She goes to the aquarium with Tomoe after school. It's kind of like a date. And Tomoe feels as if Nanami's been a little too happy, a little too hyper. So he wants to know what's going on. When they are at the rooftop at the end of the day, he confronts Nanami. Does she have feelings for him? She's kind of silent, and so, he kind of laughs at the silliness of it. Till Nanami responds, yes, he's a drama queen. He can't believe that, the words are coming out of his mouth. So he starts threatening her. He's holding her up along the edge of the building, telling her to stop lying. He can't believe, especially since he's 100% against human and yokai relationships, right? So he's threatening her, and she's kind of being a brat, and he accidentally lets go of her. And down she goes. Of course, he grabs Nanami before she falls to her death, but this is where the one-sided part of their relationship begins. To cheer Nanami up for getting rejected, Ami organizes a beach day, to which Tomoe and Mizuki invite themselves over. It was supposed to be a girls' day out. Kei is there as well, but I'm not really going to mention her. She's kind of a side character. She's a side character that we don't even interact with most of the time. But it was supposed to be girls' day out, so they're kind of bummed that the boys are coming, but they decide to let it go. The whole point was to get away from Tomoe, not have Tomoe babysit them, right? Tomoe can't directly go into the ocean because many years ago when Yukiji was ill, he gouged out the Dragon King's eye and killed some of his soldiers. So he is kind of got a death warrant on him, right? All is fine and dandy at the beach. And hey, Mikage and Otohiko, the wind god, are watching from afar. When Otohiko decides to start some shit, he uses his ability to create rough currents that ends up capsizing Ami's floaty. Ami can't swim, so she's drowning. Nanami is frantically looking for Ami and she can't find her. And so she runs up to Tomoe and begs him to help her. Seeing Nanami distraught, Tomoe steps into the ocean, which immediately notifies the Dragon King of his location. Tomoe successfully finds Ami and helps her back to the shore when he gets kidnapped by the Dragon King. Well, not kidnapped, more like taken prisoner, right? Nanami won't let go of the clam that's holding Tomoe and is transporting him to the dungeon, probably, of the castle. Seeing this, the Dragon King drags her back ashore and cuts her a deal. If she returns his stolen eye, he'll give Tomoe back to her. Nanami returns to the Mikage shrine and borrows Mizuki's incense to have him zap her back into the time. Except this time, she goes in her own body, not possessing Yukiji. She's also accompanied by Mizuki as a guide. She's greeted by a yokai, Isohime, who rambles to Nanami about sensing the dragon's right eye in her. But for now, we're gonna ignore her, right? They ignore her. They continue on their journey once they find Tomoe, and they follow him to his home, where they see him taking the dragon's right eye to Yukiji. It's also the first time that Nanami is seeing Yukiji, right? Mizuki provokes Nanami to steal the eye from her, but she can't, especially after seeing how sick Yukiji is, right? She doesn't really know at this time, but Yukiji is pregnant, and if she doesn't consume the right eye, she and the baby will die, right? But Nanami doesn't know all this. She's just a really good person, and she's like, Mizuki, we're not stealing that fucking eye. We're gonna figure out something else, right? But Mizuki insists, since he's struggling to understand why Nanami just wouldn't take the eye, because that's what he would have done for his goddess that passed away, right? After refusing to sacrifice Yukiji's health, they head back to the present to track down Isohime because they remembered, well, Nanami remembered her mentioning how Nanami might have the Dragon King's eye inside her. They need her help to take the eye out of her, even though Nanami has no idea how it ended up inside her. Like, girly pop, isn't it obvious that you might be the descendant of Yukiji? But anyway, Isohime agrees to help them out, but on one condition, that Nanami cough up 30 years of her life. Hello? That's a lot of years, right? Mizuki protests because he knows how small human lives are, but Nanami dismisses him, saying that she's still young and that it's not that big of a deal. Isohime uses her ability and takes out the eye out of Nanami while she's unconscious. The yokai plans to run away with the eye, Nanami's lives, and the land god's mark, but Mizuki gets in the way. He kisses Nanami while she's passed out. That's right, you're hearing that, right? He kisses her while she's passed out and becomes her familiar. And now that he's, Nanami's familiar, so he yeets the old yokai away while retrieving all of the items that the yokai almost took. And he also strikes a deal with Isohime to just not even take Nanami's lives, 30 years of her life. No lives were taken off Nanami, but she does knock the lights out of Mizuki, yelling at him for assaulting her while she was passed out. Pause. I also want to take a moment to talk about this particular thing. This is the one big super thing, weird thing about the anime and the manga, is that there are so many random non-consensual moments of kissing and assault that Nanami goes through. Akuro also has a role of assaulting Nanami. It's not like it adds to the plot, and it's not like it's a great comedic relief moment either. So I just kind of wanted to point out this huge flaw of this show. That's like the only part that takes you out. So back to the plot. They rush to the Dragon King's castle. On their ride to the castle, they meet the Dragon King's wife, and she shares with them what she's been sewing for her husband. But sadly, when a loud thump comes from the direction of the castle, it gets sucked away by the current. Because the window is just a little still that's blocking the outside stuff from coming in. That doesn't mean the stuff inside the ride can't go out into the ocean. They arrive at the castle to find Tomoe has been causing a ruckus. Mizuki at this point leaves to do something, and Nanami rushes up to Tomoe, who shuts himself back inside the clam once he sees Nanami. She forces the clam open and drags her familiar out of it. She hands the shriveled up eye back to the Dragon King, and he doesn't fucking want it because he's like, this is shriveled up, what the fuck? But Mizuki shows up with the fabric that had been pulled away by the current. There's no way the Dragon King could turn down the fabric after finding out that the thing that he called the ugly rag turned out to be made by his wife. So they trade the beautiful fabric for the sly fox. Tomoe is pissed to find out that Mizuki is a part of the group now, and with that, they head back to the shrine. Only now, Nanami can't stop comparing herself to Yukiji and how beautiful she was, how Tomoe looked at her, how in love they look. Flashback time. Here's how the wild cursed fox met Mikage. He was wandering around after striking a deal with a fallen god. That deal had unfortunately failed, and so now that blessing had turned into a curse. He wanted to become a human. In return, the god told him that he needed to spend the rest of his life, his human life, with the human he chose to become human for. Unfortunately, that human, Yukiji, had died, and the deal couldn't come to fruition. The curse mark started appearing on Tomoe's body, slowly killing him, as it had killed the god that he struck a deal with. Mikage takes him in his shrine and turns him into his familiar after hearing bits and tits of Tomoe's story. He erases Tomoe's memories using his abilities. With each sunrise and each moonset, your heart will heal little by little, and little by little you'll forget. It is the power of oblivion. With those words, the hopes that Tomoe forgets about the curse, and forgets about his love for Yukiji. In the meantime, Mikage desperately looks for a way to help Tomoe. Tomoe, when depressed, can often be found in Mikage's mirror. There's tons more fun episodes, but we'll get right into a pretty significant part of episode 11. The hairpin that Nanami finds, that Tomoe bought for her, it plays a huge role in breaking Tomoe's curse. One day, a mysterious miasma floods the shrine after breaking free from the storage room. Nanami's pretty upset and feels as if Tomoe and the others don't really need her, that she's unimportant, that she's kind of a burden, because they kind of shoo her away when she tries to help with the miasma. She's struggling to learn the Kagura dance for the ritual for the festival that they were planning to have, and Tomoe was being kind of harsh with her, so she has a lot of insecurities building up. The pressure of not being wanted, being seen as a burden, a failure, clouds her judgment, and she runs away from the shrine. This freaks Tomoe out, and how Mikage went to get milk and never fucking came back, so his abandonment issues are like at an all-time high right now. He sends his foxfires to look for Nanami. And Nanami, well, she's homeless again. Back at the shrine, the miasma won't disappear, and Mizuki's sake just temporarily makes things normal. And to make matters worse, Otohiko had showed up to the shrine and had made a miasma to test Nanami, so the miasma is twice as thick right now. Nanami's kind of having an emotional moment where she's thinking back of all the good times that she had at the shrine, and she realizes, you know what? The shrine is her home, so she runs back and tries to help Onikiri and Kotetsu when she sees the miasma is kind of like taking over them. She performs the Kagura dance and is successfully able to cleanse and purify the shrine and get rid of the thick miasma. At the end of the episode, after the shrine festival is complete, Tomoe kisses Nanami to reseal their familial contract. But from the heart. Like, the contract never went away, he just wanted an excuse to kiss her, I think. But this is the point where this live familiar fox starts falling for Nanami, and the one-sided relationship kind of goes away. At the end of the second OVA, we finally meet a morally gray character, who's kind of a villain. Kind of, not really. He was a villain in the past, but not in the future. Akuro. Kiruhito had died on the mountains during an avalanche before passing to the afterlife. He came across Akuro in purgatory, because that's where Akuro's soul was separated from his body. He requested to him to say goodbye to his mother. Akuro lets him know that he can't get back to his own body since it's engulfed by an eternal flame, thrown there by gods to prevent him from reaching to his immortal body. Kiruhito offers his body. He says, hey, you can take over my body. It's kind of dying right now, and hey, what's that light over there? So he kind of reaches for the light, but he lets Akuro know, if you do go back to the land of the living, say goodbye to my mom for me. Akuro takes up his offer and descends from the mountain as Kiruhito. His memories slowly return, and he slowly grows his spiritual energy back. He makes 2 shikigamis. He makes a plan to try and return to the Netherland. Alright folks, at this point we're at season 2. Otohiko pays Nanami a visit, and she insults him, calling him a Hishi guy. He yells at her, gains his composure, and invites her to the God Summit. It's a week-long event where the gods meet and work together in Izumo. Before she can attend, he gives her a test that she needs to pass. She needs to successfully take care of an egg, a shikigami egg, and make sure that it properly hatches. Unfortunately, this little egg hatches a little too early when Mizuki accidentally steps on it after it falls on the floor while Tomoe and Nanami were bickering. A cute little monkey hatches from it, and Nanami names him Mamoru, to protect. At school, a yokai attacks Nanami and Ami, but Nanami isn't able to purify the miasma. She's still using her talisman till Otohiko, who pulls Ami out while Tomoe takes care of the yokai and the miasma problem, points out to Nanami that shikigami can be used to manifest powers. Tomoe is a bit irritated that Nanami won't call for him. To call for his help, he's in his little whiny baby, pay attention to me, only me era, right? Despite being the land god, she's quite weak, and she's unable to channel her powers properly without using the talisman. That's all she uses, right? And it's not going to cut it anymore. She takes care of the shikigami, and she eventually is able to use it to channel her powers, and it's much stronger, right? At this point, Mizuki and Tomoe are arguing over who gets to go to the God Summit with Nanami, and Nanami is in town with Mamoru. They're in town when Mamoru suddenly transforms into a human kid and warns Nanami about the evil auras he's sensing around them. It's fallen gods, and they're not too happy about a human god getting an invitation to the summit and not them. They run towards the park trying to get away from the gods, and they run into Kirohito. Nanami tries protecting him, but he starts running off his mouth at the already angry gods. This idiot doesn't seem to understand that he doesn't have his yokai body anymore, and he's always pushing himself, and he gets his ass handed to him by the gods, which makes Nanami mad, so she tries helping him, but he refuses. But then he realizes, hey, this girl kind of has a lot of spiritual energy. So he changes his mind and he tries kissing Nanami unprompted. She freaks out and pushes him away and gets the fuck out of there. This girl can't get a break, I tell you. Hirohito was trying to steal her life force and spiritual energy to heal himself, right? Back at the shrine, Nanami picks Mizuki to be her guide because she doesn't want Tomoe to be bullied by the other gods because of his past. Side note, but I have no idea why Nanami goes to Izumo in her school uniform. Like, I know you own other clothes, girly pop. What the heck? On the way to Izumo, Mizuki, Mamuro, and Nanami get separated. So she can't use Mamuro for channeling her divine powers to show off to the other gods, and the other gods kind of just fly off to Izumo directly, and they're kind of pissed. Well, the war god specifically is pissed off at how weak Nanami is, and he hates her. The other gods, like I said, zoom right off to the summit, whereas Nanami has to walk there on foot. Mizuki latches onto Otohiko to get into the event and starts looking for Nanami. And he realizes that, holy fuck, Nanami hasn't made it to the summit yet. Mikage appears as an apparition and guides Nanami while spilling the beans of all the weaknesses of the gods to her. Mikage helps her reach the summit and disperses as butterflies. And that's when she realizes, holy fuck, this was Mikage, because Mikage's signature symbol is butterflies. Nanami is late, but hey, better than never. But this celebration is short-lived as Okununushi makes a personal request to Nanami. He would love for her to go to the portal of the Netherland for 2 to 3 days to prevent yokai from entering the portal. She happily agrees, and Otohiko accompanies her. When they run into Kiruhito there, obviously, he's trying to locate his body in the Netherlands. Another yokai is there, and he takes Kirohito as hostage into the Netherland and gets evaporated since he isn't strong enough. Before Kirohito can evaporate, Nanami jumps in and holds his hand, hoping her divine presence can prevent him from turning into dust. It works, which is great, but unfortunately, now they're lost in the Netherland. Kirohito stops Nanami from accepting food from the Netherland yokai. If you eat the food from there, you get stuck, right? And you can't go back to the surface. Otohiko keeps looking for Nanami in the Netherland, but has shit luck. Not to mention, he gets summoned away, and he sends his familiar to inform Tomoe of how Nanami's lost. Nanami and Kirohito find themselves at the castle of the god of the Netherland. She invites them in, and she gives Nanami permission to return back home, but Kirohito is denied since she knows he's a yokai inside a corpse. Once Kirohito is yeeted in one of the rooms, Nanami uses her talisman to trick the goddess of the Netherland into thinking that she ate the food from there and that she just wants to hang around in hell. She slips away when the goddess isn't looking and finds Kirohito. They bust out of there, and the goddess sends her familiars after them. One of Otohiko's familiars arrives at the shrine and informs Tomoe of Nanami's whereabouts, well, lack of whereabouts, in the Netherlands. So Tomoe rushes to the Netherlands portal and curses the snake for being a shitty familiar and losing Nanami. When Tomoe arrives at the entrance of the Netherland, he finds the war god sitting on top of a huge boulder, which explains why Nanami and Kirohito were running around in circles and couldn't necessarily find the exit route because it was blocked. The war god refuses to move, and so Tomoe forces his way in by reverting back into a wild fox instead of a familiar with the help of the gauntlet. I guess they decided to keep that gauntlet that belonged to Okununushi, but they hand it back to him eventually. Tomoe brings the both of them out, Kirohito and Nanami, right? Starting from this point, Tomoe starts questioning what Nanami means to him a bit more, paying closer attention to his feelings for this human. He also, because he's not her familiar anymore, has the option to not be her familiar or go back. And of course, he goes back. But not after questioning his feelings for Nanami, if they're real or if it's because he's her familiar. On the last day of this god summit, Nanami meets Mikage after so long, face to face, not as an apparition or anything else, right? Tomoe sees them chatting from a distance and chases after, but by the time he reaches, Mikage is gone. Mikage tells Nanami about Tomoe's curse and how he won't agree to meet Tomoe till he is ready. Ready for what? Ready to tackle his old curse. Ready to finally love humans again. So he's kind of waiting for him, Tomoe, to fall in love fully and confess to Nanami before he comes up and helps him. From here, we jump into Kurama's backstory, and the arc with the Tengus begins. A little cute Tengu known as Botanmaru, who can't fly yet, comes down from Mount Kurama after the thick miasma and fog spreads around the mountains after the Shojobo, also Shinjiro Kurama's father, the head of the Tengu clan, has supposedly grown ill. No one has seen him since. The cherry blossoms have withered, and things seem dire ever since Jiro had taken over the role of temporary head of clan. He had already banished many young Tengu from the clan to the human realm because they seemed weak to him. The little Tengu hopes to bring back Shinjiro Kurama back to the mountain to become the new head and to help the clan restore things back to normal. But his search has been unsuccessful until he bumps into Nanami, and surely she and her familiar will help, right? Yes or no? Yes, Nanami will help. But no, not before Tomoe air yeets the child. Turns out the Shinjiro Kurama that they're looking for is none other than the pop star idol, total drama queen, Kurama. He refuses to go at first, but readies up. Tomoe and Nanami also go along with him. Kurama wasn't able to fly when he was a young Tengu as well, and so he got picked on a lot, especially by Jiro, who would beat him for being weak. If he tried to fit in with the other Tengu, he'd get in trouble for not acting properly as the Shujobo's son. He couldn't win either way, but luckily, Brother Suiro treated him with loving care. Sadly, one day, when the Thunder Beast was out, Suiro used himself to protect Kurama from the beast, sacrificing his ability to fly. Kurama couldn't handle the pressure, and he felt absolutely horrible for what he did, or what happened because he was protected. So he ran away to the human realm. Once the gang arrives to the mountain, they can sense the gloomy nature. Plus, Nanami notices how all the boys and men run away from her like she's some sort of disease or something. Women aren't permitted at Mount Kurama, so her just being around is freaking everyone out, and they're yelling and running away. And they don't know how to talk to her because they've never talked to girls in their entire life. Jiro included, who falls in love with her when she uses her ability to temporarily restore the withered cherry blossoms. But he snaps back to reality for a second and grabs onto Nanami's arm, almost snapping it into two. Mamoru protects Nanami, and the two flee from the weird Tengu. Since Jiro had seen Nanami, Kurama and Tomoe will have to distract Jiro, while Botanmaru, Nanami, and Mamoru go searching for the Sojobo to give him the peach pills Nanami got from the god summit. So Nanami grants Kurama a temporary land god mark and sacred word binding to make Tomoe his familiar. Posing as the new land god of the Mikage shrine, Tomoe and Kurama pay Jiro a visit, demanding and requesting his company. The plan was to get Jiro drunk, make his spiritual barrier around the mountains weaker, so that it's easier for Nanami to use her god abilities to find Shojobo. But Kurama passes out before Jiro does, and so Tomoe transforms into Nanami after hearing Jiro refer to her as the celestial nymph, because he doesn't know Nanami's name. Got a big old crush on her, right, even though he tried to snap her arm in two. His focus wavers, and it's enough for the second gang to locate the Shojobo. To their surprise, the Shojobo isn't ill in bed at all, but is frozen solid, like stone. The yokai Yatori, Akuro's loyal posse, had promised Kirohito a strong, easily to manipulate army, and the Tengu was his target. Yatori had sent Shojobo a huge feather of Kurama, and wrote as if he was Kurama, showing like, oh, hey, Dad, I can finally fly, and here's my wing. Look at how big my wing got. And he got, the old man's really emotional. He hasn't seen his son since he was a child who ran away to the human world, so he's gotten a little in his feels, and he starts crying, and he gets turned into stone by Yatori, right? Tricked and stoned, his people were taken advantage of, and Jiro manipulated into participating without ever realizing what was truly happening, listening to every word Yatori has said to him. The Sojoba's soul was taken and hidden inside the stomach of the Thunder Beast that the Tengu kept sealed underneath. Back with Gang 1, Jiro knows something is up with Tomoe and Kurama, so he puts a barrier around them, preventing them from escaping while he checks on what the fuss is about. Nanami, with the help of Mamuro, using her barrier against evil, yeets Yatori probably back to Kirohito, and proceeds to run around the entire palace with her barrier against evil, leaving a shiny golden glitter and sparkle, hoping to get rid of the thick fog and crazy miasma plaguing the mountains. The barrier around Tomoe and Kurama breaks and they are free. Jiro helps Nanami find the Sojoba soul and brings it back, but gets hurt in the process while protecting Nanami from the Thunder Beast. Guilt takes over Nanami, and she offers the peach pills to help with his recovery. She refuses to leave till Jiro wakes up, and she's also forgotten that she's kind of gotten a love confession from Jiro when he was, after he was struck by lightning and before he passed out, so she's not really thinking about that, right? But we all know that she rejects his ass because she loves Tomoe, right? And Tomoe was also pretty paranoid that she would want to choose Jiro and stay at the mountains. The mountain gradually heals, and the eternal cherry blossom celebration commence because it's blooming again, right? Jiro takes Nanami up onto the cherry blossom tree, wishing for her to remain in the Tengu village with him. He thanks her for the peach pills and returns the rest of them to her, surprised that she even gave it to him since they were originally meant to be a parting gift for Tomoe if he chose not to be her familiar. Jiro asks her to stay a while longer so that he may remember her with the cherry blossoms, kind of imprinting that scene of her smiling into his memory. Later on, Nanami gets drunk, and Tomoe carries her on his back. She falls asleep after confessing her love, to which silently Tomoe confesses his love for her back. Meanwhile, Kirohito attempts to retrieve his body after he locates it with a portal he created in his bedroom, but he has to bail since the flames are impossible to get to without the robe of feathers that he'll have to steal from the mermaid yokai Unari later. He returns back when suddenly black poison fog starts filling up the room coming from the portal. Hearing his mother outside call for him, he freaks out and breaks the portal to prevent her from getting poisoned. Akuro, while pretending to be Kirohito, starts treating Kirohito's mother like his own mother. Maybe it's because he's never known motherly love. Who knows? But what I do know is Akuro would never intentionally hurt Ako, who he now sees as his mom. This is around the time when the anime ends, or rather season 2 ends, and the last 4 OVAs start. The OVAs completely skip the Himemiko and Kotaru arc, where some random water yokai wants to marry Himemiko and is against Kotaru and her relationship, and Nanami and friends go and stop the wedding or something like that. It's like a fun side adventure, and I'll be skipping that to get to the main plot, when Nanami goes back in time to find a way to break Tomoe's curse. Since Tomoe has not only learned to love humans again, he has also confessed his love for Nanami despite being asleep when she did it. The curse is back, along with all of his memories. Mikage soon appears before them and informs Nanami and the others that Tomoe was cursed. When he fell in love with a human, he made a deal with the fallen god to turn him into a human so that he can spend the rest of his life with Yukiji. Mikage seals Tomoe in his pocket mirror and lets everyone know that the fox has only 7 days to live. The first trip back in time, Nanami is found by Yukiji, who hates yokai from the bottom of her heart since her entire village and family was killed by them. Hearing that the past Tomoe has been severely injured at the riverside, Nanami tries to persuade Yukiji to go after him, which Yukiji's kind of confused because why would she help a yokai? Nanami then rushes to find Tomoe before the villagers can kill him. And at this point, Tomoe decides to turn himself into a human child in hopes that they would help him instead of killing him. Nanami finds him and carries him back to Yukiji's home and begs her for help. Yukiji's suspicious of the child, but Nanami says that I don't really remember the fake name that she gave. It must have been Kentaro or something like that to Tomoe, and says that he's a boy that was from her village or something like that. So Yukichi, despite being suspicious, lets Nanami bring her in because she feels like Nanami is a family to her. Nanami feels so familiar to her, despite all her family being gone. Nanami doesn't show herself to Tomoe and hides in the shadows, and she waits for Yukiji to try and comfort Tomoe, which she doesn't because she doesn't really know this kid, right? The villagers begin accusing Yukiji of harboring Tomoe in her home because they're all hunting him down, right? But her adoptive father puts, puts a stop to all of that. It's like, no, because there's a marriage proposal being arranged for Yukiji, and he can't have people shit talking their reputation, right? Nanami has Yuta, the little kid who helps Nanami take care of Tomoe. He has him go into Tomoe's room and give child Tomoe peach pills to try and help him with his recovery. Tomoe begins to question why Nanami, or to him Yukiji, only visits him when he is asleep or at night. Right? He plans to kidnap her once he's recovered and finds out from Futa that Yukiji is away to a family after being offered a marriage proposal. He heads out to claim her or kill her since he doesn't see a reason to let her live if she will marry another human. Watching Nanami run away in the middle of the night, Tomoe goes after her. He's about to reach her when Nanami trips and falls because she's having trouble breathing because her time is up. The first time travel is up. She is starting to slowly reach the point where she will have to go back, right? And she knows she needs to reach the fallen god as soon as possible, and there's not a single sign of the dude at all. Seeing a frail Nanami, Tomoe changed his mind about killing her. Akuro is curious about this beautiful human that Tomoe has maybe had feelings for, and he sets his yokai little posse on a hunt for Yukiji. Nanami isn't able to locate the fallen god, whom Tomoe made a deal with in time, and is yeeted back to the present by Mikage. On the next time travel trip, Nanami is overly prepped by everyone. They kind of fill her bag with everything, especially peach cans, which because Akuro runs into her for a day and he eats the peach from her bag all the time. They have like a little cute, fun day in the manga, not in the anime. Nanami runs into Yukiji in the capital and is brought back to her residence. Yukiji tells her that she received a better marriage proposal with her lord this time instead of the previous one when she last saw Nanami. Nanami is resting at Yukiji's place when one of Akuro's minions attacks her, but gets its head sliced off by Yukiji's blade. She's become a target, but Nanami comes up with a plan to trick Akuro when he comes for her during the marriage ceremony. She will sub in for Yukiji when they are heading out for the wedding prep, right? The plan works, but she gets struck by a poison-infused twig and is struggling to win her fight with just talismans. She doesn't have Mamoru by her side to channel her divine powers. Tomoe comes to Nanami's rescue and brings her to an abandoned shelter in the woods. It hurts Nanami when Tomoe calls her Yukiji. He's also very sketchy in this scene when he tries to make moves in Nanami. When Nanami asks him to take her back home, Tomoe assumes she wants to return to her, Yukiji's fiance, to which he tries to talk her out of it. He hands her the hairpin he gives her in the future, letting her know that he found it on the floor. She snatches it back from him, letting him know that it's a precious gift given to her by someone precious to her. And no, it's not from the freaking Lord, because he's jealous of him. Tomoe brings Nanami to a field of sakura trees, kind of like how Jiro did, right? He wants to see her smile. The wild fox is falling in love with Nanami. Has been each time since she would time travel back, but he's always mistaken her for Yukiji because Nanami never really gave her name to him. So, yeah, he's getting them mixed up. Nanami makes a promise to Tomoe that she will marry him, but he has to wait, and it's going to be a while, but they can't be together right now. What she doesn't tell him is, I'm from the future, and you're gonna have to wait 500 years, my guy. So, time traveling during this trip is almost over, and this is also the last time that I think she meets Tomoe when she time travels. Her body fails as the poison is starting to consume her, so Tomoe finally gives in and takes her to Yukiji's place, because that's where she belongs, is what he thinks, right? Because he thinks that she's that Yukiji. Before leaving Nanami, Tomoe requests to keep the hairpin to remember her by, and as a proof of her promise to marry him in the future. After this interaction, Tomoe looks for the fallen god, Kuromaru, to make a deal to be human, so that he can be with Yukiji until death does them apart. And well, you know the rest. You're caught up. To seal a contract, Kuromaru asks for an important item to Tomoe, and he hands the hairpin. On her next trip back to the past, Nanami finds Kuromaru, who reveals to her the location of his death and how the pin is the key to saving Tomoe. Nanami rushes back to the future before stumbling in between and landing in a timeline 20 years prior to the present. She meets Mikage and is shocked to find out that he doesn't know who she is. Hearing that Nanami kind of knew a way to save Tomoe, Mikage begs her to spill the tea. And now we know why Mikage 20 years ago left the shrine and went to get milk and never came back home. Nanami returns and immediately requests the carriage to be carried to Mount Ontake with Mizuki. They will find the hairpin there on the exact location that she tried to memorize where Kuromaru had died. Back at the shrine, Tomoe believes he does not deserve to live after letting Yukiji die. He's being super emo and all. And by the way, the reason why Nanami has to find the hairpin exactly where Kuromaru had died was because he swallowed the pin. He ate it. So, yeah. Also, in the anime, we don't see all the time the actual Yukiji and Tomoe spent together, but in the manga, Yukiji's place gets attacked by Akuro and her husband is killed. So Tomoe protects Yukiji and makes sure that Akuro doesn't come after her. He poses as a human from time to time, traveling here and there, taking care of Yukiji because Yukiji is also pregnant. She never learns to love Tomoe, but she's grateful to him and dies with a smile, giving her thanks to him as she's nearing death. She gets killed by Akuro later, by the way. Nanami yeets Mikage to the side and tackle hugs Tomoe with a hairpin in her hand and smiles brightly. She asks if he remembers her promise to him. The 500-year curse is lifted and Tomoe embraces Nanami. They kiss and that's the end of the main plotline. Now, let's tie up some loose threads like Akuro, right? What happens to Kirohito? Because Akuro is possessing the body of Kirohito, so let's get on to that. The OVA ends after Tomoe and Nanami kiss, by the way. That's as far as it gets animated. The last animated episode that they ever made was in 2016 or 2017, and that was the final chapter of Tomoe becoming human and Nanami living their lives as humans. That was it. But after the arc is over, the rest is entirely in the manga except the final chapter, like I said, which has been animated. The Okinawa arc begins. It's one of the final arcs that has to do with Ami and Kurama's relationship and a little bit of Kirohito. Everyone is on a school trip to Okinawa when a miasma attaches itself onto the class's flight to Okinawa. The weather goes from sunny to shit and everyone is stuck at the hotel for a while. Nanami bumps into Kirohito at the airport. He's bleeding and so Nanami tries to clean him up, but he kisses her, trying to steal and successfully steals spiritual energy. Mizuki is stuck with Kurama's group for the trip and he hates being away from Nanami, especially now that the wild fox is dating her. The girls are teasing Ami about Kurama, but Tomoe ruins the fun by saying that the two are in different worlds. And I'm like, sir, aren't you officially dating Nanami now? So you can't be a yokai and human can't be together anymore type of vibe because you are with Nanami. Whatever. He's kind of like the fun for me and not for thee, right? Ami is in the bath, overthinking what Tomoe said, in her feels, when a yokai's hand pops up from behind her and yanks her away, calling her a thief, clearly mistaking her for probably Kirohito. Maybe the scent from Nanami got caught on to Ami when Ami hugged her at the airport after spotting her running away from a weird dude. She gets turned into a dolphin by Unari, the leader of mermaids. She sends a messenger demanding her robe of feathers to be returned in exchange for Ami. Only women are allowed at Unari's cave, so only Nanami can go. So Nanami jumps into the bathtub with a little spirit and finds Ami as a dolphin, but inside a sphere. And yep, we get confirmation that it is in fact Kirohito who stole the robe from the mermaid so he can go retrieve his old body from the flames covering it, right? He lied about wanting to be a husband to Unari and took what he needed and yeeted himself out. Kirohito, on the other hand, is going through it. He can hear the mermaid singing non-stop, growing sicker and weaker. His Shikigami are worried. Nanami is tossed into the ocean instead of being returned to the bathtub where she was picked up from. She's almost drowning when Kirohito's Shikigami shows up asking for Nanami's help, her life force for the robe. they make the deal. I don't know why they made the deal. It's a horrible deal. The scene is so cryptic with the manga and how it's illustrated. He drained Nanami's life force by assaulting her. I mean, I'll show you the screen caps, right? Or rather, the screenshots. And you let me know how creepy it comes off. Very confusing for me. But Tomoe tracks them down, grabs Nanami, and is helped by the little yokai messengers. He gives Tomoe medicine that'll bring life back to Nanami. Her soul was freezing. It's a little favor since she returned back the robe. Since Tomoe was taking forever to find Nanami, Mizuki goes to bug Kurama and drags him to find everyone that's missing. Kei threatens to leak what Kurama truly is to the press if he doesn't bring back Ami. And to save Ami we go. The two get separated by the seawater. Kurama gets emo because he's lost in the dark when Ami swims up to him and helps him swim away. Kurama accidentally sees the mermaid's face, and she's like, "We're going to get married because I only want my husband to see my face," right? She hands him a potion that'll transform him into a merman. He grabs a potion and makes a run for it because it might revert Ami back to a human. He keeps thinking about how he doesn't want to leave Ami alone as a dolphin. The mermaid is furious. She doesn't want to give up without breaking into a fight. But luckily for Kurama, Mizuki is here. He offers to be her husband instead. The mermaid releases Ami into the open ocean, and Kurama struggles to find her in the storm. Meanwhile, Mizuki helps the mermaid see that she is beautiful and that she doesn't need to hide her face. He compliments her cooking, her other skills. He wins her heart, and the ocean starts to quiet down. Kurama starts singing, probably one of his dumb but catchy songs, and Ami recognizes it. She starts following it while munching on seaweed. Kurama and Ami meet, and he gives her the potion. And yay, she's finally back to being a human, and also her hair is really long too. Kurama is starting to have a soft spot for Ami and her kind words to him. The mermaid wants to know everything about Mizuki. The more she learns, the more she feels as if she could let him go back with Nanami. She gives him her robe that Nanami returned, and with that, the gang is back to their trip. So she lets Mizuki go because she feels like because he's a familiar, he needs to go back to Nanami. But Mizuki promises that he'll visit her once a year. There's also a side story with a shrine maiden in Okinawa that Tomoe met many, many years ago. The little girl is now an old woman on her deathbed. This is the first example of an aging human that Tomoe knows personally, and it bothers him a lot. He realizes that he will lose Nanami to old age someday, and he'll keep living on unless he tries to become human. Luckily for him, Kurama still has some of that mermaid potion that Ami used to turn back into human. So maybe it might turn Tomoe from a yokai to a human too. Who knows? Meanwhile, Mikage is helping Nanami see things from Tomoe's perspective since she's against him becoming a human and dying. It's like a father-daughter relationship. Honestly, that's like the closest father, good father figure that Nanami's probably going to ever have is Mikage. Tomoe chugs down the potion, but he turns into a fox. And so, sad and kind of treating Tomoe like a pet, Nanami goes to buy a grooming comb for Tomoe when she bumps into Kirohito there. She's 100% sure now that Kirohito is Akuro because of their speaking mannerisms and the things that he says. Not to mention, Kirohito calls Nanami the scarf woman, which is something that Akuro called Nanami in the past. So she's like, oh shit. She steps on his foot and runs away home. She lets Tomoe know that she met Akuro while she was out. Kirohito is being ass-kissed by the yokai Yatori when one of his shikigami tells him about his mom looking for him. So he goes home, gets bitch slapped by his mom because he's being disrespectful to her. She starts crying and he reassures her, which is like, wow. Maybe Akuro as a demon just needed a mom or something because he's super nice to Kirohito's mom. He lets her walk all over him, but he also understands that Kirohito's mom, Ako, is just worried because her son's really different now, shut in and pushes her away, is mean to her, right? Yatori, he hates seeing Akuro being affectionate with the mom, and he hates the fact that, Kirohito refuses to kill Nanami. So he thinks of a little evil plot. He attacks Nanami when she's on her way to get Tomoe back to normal. Because, he's a fox now. They fight. She uses a talisman to open up and drop into hell. Nanami's powers aren't to the level of Yatori, but luckily for her, the loud sound created by their fights and all has alerted Jiro, since it was really close to Mount Kurama. Jiro takes care of Yatori for now and takes Nanami back to the mountain. And this is where Nanami finds out from Suiro. Nanami's time is running out since Kirohito had drained most of her life force and she's only got 6 months to live. She stays at the mountain for a bit and heads back to the shrine. Kirohito is heading back to get his body back. And while he's away, Yatori kills his mom. The gods head to the Netherland to get Kirohito to prevent him from getting to Akuro's body and to rescue Okununushi. There's like a random side plot happening where Yatori had kidnapped that gauntlet god, right? And that god is kind of hanging out with the fallen god Kuromaru to try and bring him back to life or something. We're not going to pay attention to that. Fox Tomoe finds Kirohito, who is cold, and hugs the fox, gently smiling. Something is different about him now. He has learnt to be a bit better, is what Tomoe thinks. Kirohito has no idea that he's hugging Tomoe right now, but the moment gets killed by Yatori. Meanwhile, Izanami, the goddess of the Netherland, gives Nanami a flower bulb that would turn Tomoe back to normal, and so they go searching for Tomoe and Kirohito. By they, I mean most of the gods and Nanami. And Ako, a child, tags along with the group as they search for Kirohito. She insists that they shouldn't kill Kirohito. And if you're suspecting that the child who's crying that they shouldn't kill Kirohito is Kirohito's mom, then yeah, it's her wandering soul. The child at this point has regained her memories and is now in her adult form. The god of war shows up and attacks Yatori and Kirohito. Kirohito stops as soon as he sees his mom, because he was like charging in to get his body, right? Seeing her, Kirohito is confused for a moment. Why was she there? He confronts Yatori for killing his mom, rage taking over him. And she reaches out for Kirohito, telling him that he needs to stop whatever he's doing and they just need to go back home. Yatori's pissed seeing the two of them talk, and he sneak attacks Ako again. And without thinking, Kirohito jumps in front of the attack. Tomoe can't believe what he's seeing. He can't believe that Akuro had jumped in to save a human. Before Kirohito dies, he hands his life force that he took from Nanami back to Tomoe. In the end, Tomoe takes care of Yatori back in his yokai form, and the other gods contemplate what to do with Akuro's soul. They decide that they'll let him reincarnate as a human after all. After everything is said and done, right? Nanami has her life force back again, so no more dying in 6 months. Tomoe is back to being her familiar, and Kirohito is dead and gone. After everything calms down and Mikage is back at his shrine, Okunushi, I can't say his name properly, but that guy, visits the shrine and offers to turn Tomoe into a human. They graduate high school, Nanami's enrolled in college, Tomoe and Nanami then, after throwing a festival, get married, right? They're getting married. There's a huge party that everyone's invited to, but it's also their farewell party, because this is the last time that Tomoe is going to be a familiar and a yokai, and he's going to be turned into a human. And yeah, he gets turned into a human. They get to say their goodbyes. It's very emotional. And surprise, surprise, Akuro is reincarnated a few years later as a girl named Kirara, which is so funny because Akuro in the manga is such a little prick to women. He's pretty misogynistic, so it's funny that he used to make fun of girls and now he is a girl. The manga ends with Tomoe and Nanami getting married, living 10 years in the human world, and they have an unnamed son. And when they have the son is when they finally return back 10 years later to the shrine and meet Mikage, Mizuki, and Onikiri and Kotetsu finally, So they say goodbye to their lives, regular human lives, because I'm pretty sure they quit their jobs after she gives birth to her kid. So yeah, they're back at the shrine. And that's the end of Kamisama Kiss. Like, the one thing that made me sad was how Kurama and Ami never really got to be together. He tries not to keep her hopes up. He tells her not to wait for him. and that he might not descend down from the mountains because his father's fine, but they're prepping to pass on the role of the head of the Tengu clan to someone else. And so he goes back to Mount Kurama to help with the preparations, right? And he doesn't know when he'll be back in the human realm. So he retires as a pop idol after he graduates high school, and he heads back to the mountain. So he tells Ami not to wait, but she waits for him. And so, it's kind of sad. So we never get an ending for them. But what were some things that you liked about this? What were some things that you didn't like? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye bye.